heavy and quite prolonged rain over Scotland could cause some local flooding. Here's the leading edge first thing in the morning. Won't be long before it gets from Glasgow to Edinburgh, down the valley there, onto the Aberdeen coast, and then clearing up for a little while behind, but showers breaking out with thunder and lightning. Could be some really nasty conditions, strong winds too. That's the rain into Ireland, getting into Belfast quickly first thing in the morning. Then it gets down to Dublin by the end of the morning, and the rain clears Donegal and the far northwest, but showers following in smartly. Over England and Wales, it might start off okay. You might think it's all right. But this strong wind will increase during the morning. The rain will crash across the Irish Sea into Anglesey and into Manchester, Cumbria about the middle of the day.
Sky News weather, sponsored by Ryanair.com, the low fares airline.
Just joined us with the Sky News. These are the latest headlines. The Prime Minister has arrived at the TUC conference in Brighton to a hostile reception from protesters. In a speech to delegates this afternoon, he'll try to allay fears about his plans to use more private companies and money in public services.
There are claims that vital evidence in the investigation of the Lockerbie bombing was lost. A Heathrow security guard reportedly told police that Pan Am's baggage area had been broken into just before the jumbo jet took off. And Eurotunnel is awaiting a French court ruling on its request to close the Sangatte refugee centre a mile from its terminal at Calais. The camp is the scene of nightly attempts by asylum seekers to get to Britain. Well, as the government moves towards privatising some essential services within the NHS, thousands of patients could soon be sent overseas for treatment. Under plans being finalised at the Department of Health, people could be treated in private European hospitals. This week, Sky News will be following one man who's flying to Germany for a knee operation.
Every time Raman Mukherjee climbs the stairs to his fourth-floor flat, the pain from his arthritic knee gets worse. He can't afford to wait 18 months for an NHS operation, and in desperation he's flying to Berlin this week for surgery. He's paying, but within months NHS patients could be sent on free package deals to private German hospitals in a bid to cut waiting lists.
The standard of surgical skill is as good in Germany, if not better, and the other facilities are, it appears, are much better.
1 in 5 German hospital beds lies empty. In theory, the efficient health system could treat the 1 million patients on NHS queues in a single year. Several NHS trusts have already made discreet inquiries about sending patients abroad.
When I first made contact with Europe, they actually didn't know what the word waiting list meant, because people don't have to wait more than a couple of weeks then.
But the British Medical Association warns there must be checks to ensure treatment abroad is of a high standard, and there could be problems with aftercare, something the Mukherjees are well aware of.
There are uncertainties with it, because obviously we don't know the hospital, we don't know the doctors, but we have been reassured by the authorities or by the hospital that it will be okay.
The government says it doesn't expect plane loads of patients to be heading to Europe for treatment. It says overseas care is just a short-term measure to take pressure off the NHS, while the millions now being spent on it cut waiting lists to just a few months. Thomas Moore, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, more now on the debate over public services. The Prime Minister is going to address the trade unions in around about an hour's time or thereabouts. We're joined from Brighton now by Nigel de Gruchy, the General Secretary of the National Association of Schoolmasters and Union of Women Teachers, and a member of the TUC's General Council. Mr de Gruchy, thanks for joining us here on Sky News this afternoon. Will he get a pleasant reception?
Well, I'm sure we're going to be very polite to the Prime Minister. I don't believe for one moment that the TUC and its delegates are going to act in any way similar to the Women's Institute.
OK, but when you say polite to him, does that mean a warm welcome? Are you very keen to hear what he's got to say?
We're all very interested to hear what he's got to say. I rather hope that he would be able to come and give us a positive programme of measures he was going to take to improve education and health and other public services. I suspect, unfortunately, for pretty obvious reasons, that we'll be looking to him to, if you like, undo the very damaging spin that was put upon the privatisation story during the course of the general election campaign.
Are you against privatisation of some public services?
I am, not based on any dogmatic objection to the private sector. They obviously have a very important job to do. And I appreciate what they do perform for the economy and for millions and millions of people. But when you look at the experience of privatisation over many years now, I think it's been a very bitter experience for many people. I don't think there's been the improvement in services or in products for that matter. In fact, I think very much to the contrary. You only have to look to the railways and to other areas, to the involvement of the private sector in trying to computerise the passport and railways and the air traffic control, where you will see the private sector makes many mistakes as well. And it has unfortunately been the case. The privatisation has been characterised by a quite significant diminution of the employees' pay and conditions of service. And that's very unfortunate. We need the very opposite in teaching, for example, where we need to make the whole profession a lot more attractive so we can get people in to deliver first-class education to the nation's youngsters.
But you're not suggesting that the privatisation of some schools is necessarily a bad idea, are you? Because we've seen some schools that have failed and then a private company has come in to run it and they have become much more successful as a result.
That's a very premature judgment, Kay, because the experience so far speaks for itself. And if you look at the record, which I'm prepared to do and stand by, then you will find, according to the government's own figures, that we've turned around in the public sector 778 schools that were deemed to be failing as a consequence of their Ofsted inspection report. Why all the hype? Because in the last couple of months, there's been 2 schools in Surrey which have been partly handed over to privatised hands, and incidentally given huge additional sums of money, way over and above that which is given to other schools in the council. I mean, the King's College in Guildford is given £2 million extra. The one which opened yesterday, £1.3 million extra over and above the odds. So when I look at the record, there's 778 good successes for the state sector. There's 2 so far in the private sector, given huge additional amounts of money. It's simply not a level playing field, and I just don't understand the hype which is given to privatisation, where we can prove and have proved in the public sector, given the resources, given the support, we can turn around failing schools.
But does that not illustrate that a public-private partnership is a win-win situation then? So some schools work better in public hands, others work better in private hands?
No, I don't think it does, because these schools could have been turned around in the way which has obviously been done in 778 cases.
They weren't there, were they, Mr. DeGruchy? They weren't there, were they?
It's still premature. But it's worked in 778 other cases it's worked.
Indeed, but in these 2 it didn't. And the LEA didn't want to be involved with them anymore, which is why they handed it over to to a private company to run.
That's not the case at all, because Surrey did not make any serious attempts to turn around the 2 schools concerned. They weren't given a proper chance, and furthermore, their difficulties were anyway made much worse as a consequence of the market forces that were introduced by the previous Conservative government, particularly the establishment of grant-maintained and selective schools around these 2 particular schools in the Surrey area, which only compounded their problems, and they weren't that failing anyway. I've seen many local education authorities turn around schools which were in far worse a situation than the 2 in Surrey. The 2 in Surrey was a political ploy by the Conservatives who were in charge there to try and make a point. Unfortunately, it was taken up by the Labour government. OK, Mr
DeGruchy, thanks very much indeed. Prime Minister speaking in about an hour's time or so. Perhaps you'd be good enough to come and chat to us again after that and tell us what you thought about his speech. We'll see if you've got the time. Thanks a lot.
Be happy to do so.
Well, more now on the claims that evidence may have been ignored in the investigation into the Lockerbie bombing. Joining us now is Professor Robert Black from Edinburgh University, who is heavily involved in the inquiry and the setting up of the trial in the Netherlands. Good afternoon to you, Professor.
Good afternoon.
Did you know that security guard Ray Manley had told police that Pan Am's baggage area in Heathrow had been broken into 17 hours before the flight took off?
No, like most of the rest of the world, I was completely unaware of this.
So what do you think now that you do know?
Well, I think that this might have a significant influence on the appeal which is due to be heard in the case of Megrahi, the 1 Libyan who was convicted.
What do the families want? Have you spoken to any of the families of the victims? What are they asking for?
The families of the victims, I think, particularly the British relatives, want a public inquiry because their view is that a trial is too closely focused on the guilt or innocence of individuals. And there is much more to Lockerbie and much more known about Lockerbie than simply what points towards individuals. So they want an open-ended inquiry.
But what can an open-ended inquiry gather? What can be the aim of that inquiry?
Well, the aim is to find out, really, all that is known about what happened at Lockerbie, who was responsible for the bomb, and indeed what steps ought to have been taken from a security standpoint that might have prevented it. Are there lessons to be learned?
But you have to admit this is very, very crucial evidence in a long-running investigation. Why has it only come to light now?
Wish I could answer that question. It may very well have been because a number of different organisations at an early stage were involved in the investigation of the Lockerbie tragedy, and that perhaps the coordination amongst those organisations was not as good as it might have been.
So we're going to see this continuing for some time to come. It must be awful for the families of the victims.
Indeed, certainly from what we hear, it is likely that the appeal will not be heard until the middle of January, so it will certainly rumble on until then.
Professor, thank you very much for talking to us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Latest business news now with Michael.
Thanks. Afternoon. Europe's car makers are gathered in Frankfurt for their annual summit, the Frankfurt Motor Show. Despite a difficult year, especially for Ford, new models are being launched with the traditional razzmatazz in the hope that consumers will carry on spending their cash on new cars.
Ford is trying to emerge from the shadow of a difficult period. In an industry hit hard by overcapacity, Ford's market share has shrunk from 12% to 7% in the last 5 years. Having delayed announcing its financial results, the company now admits it lost around £1 billion last year. The launch of the new Fiesta comes at a crucial time, but Ford Europe's chairman believes the British arm of the business should be breaking even by the end of this year. But pressure over prices remains high. Businessman Richard Branson is meeting the EU Commissioner Mario Monti today to press for reform of the European rules on buying cars. Mr. Branson says his internet car sales company could offer bigger discounts if he could buy vehicles direct from manufacturers rather than dealers.
Well, at the moment, through Virgin Cars on the internet, we can save customers between 10 and 30%. We think that if we can buy direct from the manufacturers, A, we can speed up the delivery, and B, we should be able to save our customers anything up to 40–50%.
There are signs of an upturn in confidence. Honda yesterday officially opened the first car plant to be built in the UK for 8 years. The £130 million facility at South Marston near Swindon will create around 1,000 new jobs, and Swindon will become the only production facility in the world for the new Civic 3-door, exporting to Japan, USA and Canada. And Jaguar is hoping to renew an assault on the American market by developing the principles seen in its new concept car, the R-Coupe. The four-seater will not make it to full production, but the use of aluminium in its construction should make it a far less thirsty beast than its predecessors. Paul Brennan, Sky News.
The high street clothing shop Next has reported a 15% rise in profits for the first half of the year at 93 million. Next has thrived while bigger retailers like Marks & Spencer and C&A have struggled in the British market. Its shares have reflected that, having been the best performer in the FTSE clothing sector. Friends Provident, the life insurance company that came to the stock market in June, says it made £92 million in first half profits, but it says new life business is down 40% in the first 6 months of the year. It expects a recovery in the second half, but not to the level it enjoyed in 2000. Later this week, Friends Provident is to join the FTSE index of Britain's top companies. Here's today's figures, and a bit of a move upwards, but only really making a bit of retaining a bit of lost ground. We'll wait to see what New York does in 3/4 of an hour. As far as the currencies are concerned, sterling are losing ground against the dollar, marginally against yesterday's strength. It's just the dollar's got strong because they expect Wall Street to open stronger. And on the Sky News website, you can get more advice on your personal investments by clicking the Your Money icon. That'll give you access to information on a range of personal finance topics. Good luck.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Michael. A Concorde jet has taken off from Heathrow Airport with passengers on board for the first time since the aircraft were grounded after last summer's crash in Paris. But they haven't paid for the flight. It's part of tests before the fleet finally resumes flights next month.
A new atlas of the world's coral reefs shows there's much less than previously thought. The United Nations says that what coral remains is being overfished, poisoned or deliberately destroyed.
In the waters of Cartagena in Colombia, coral reefs are being blown to pieces. It's a highly destructive form of fishing, but local people say they've little choice if they want to earn a living in this job-starved region.
We know this destroys the coral, but this way I get more fish. No fish means no food for my family.
This extreme form of fishing, pollution and global warming are all taking their toll on the world's coral. The results of a decade-long scientific study of these marine habitats makes startling reading. It found far fewer coral reefs than first thought. And of all the threats, scientists say global warming is of particular concern. The 1998 El Niño warming of the Pacific is a stark example of what could happen if sea temperatures rise.
Those waters were only about 1 or 2 degrees centigrade above the normal maximum. Not very much at all, but that was enough. And what happened was the corals bleached as usual. They went on and died, and the scale of this event was enormous.
Known as the rainforests of the sea, coral reefs are home to more than 2 million marine species. But scientists warn unless urgent action is taken to protect them, they could all but disappear by the middle of this century. Humans are responsible for much of the damage, but they could also be part of the solution. More than 15 million people scuba dive. The income they bring can help governments fund proper conservation measures. Mark White, Sky News.
Headlines here on Sky News. The Prime Minister has arrived at the TUC conference in Brighton to a hostile reception from protesters. He's expected to address the conference within the next hour. He'll try to allay fears about his plans to use more private companies and money in public services.
There are claims that vital evidence in the investigation of the Lockerbie bombing was lost. A Heathrow security guard reportedly told police that Pan Am's baggage area had been broken into just before the jumbo jet took off.
And Eurotunnel is awaiting a French court ruling on its request to close the Sangatte refugee centre a mile from its terminal at Calais. The camp is the scene of nightly attempts by asylum seekers to get to Britain.
Looking at the weather for you this afternoon, fine pleasant day for most of Britain and Ireland. Light rain will clear in the southwest. Calm is how Francis puts it.
Stay with Sky News. Still to come.
Mercury Music Awards, why a win is sometimes considered a curse. It's by the industry.
I didn't kill my husband. You have to believe me. Hi, Mommy.
Oh, how are you, Maddie?
Daddy.
Nick?
The state says you already killed your husband. They can't convict you of it a second time. That means that when you leave here, you can kill him.
Who's this? That's somebody I'm looking for. Pretty girl? Oh, yeah, she's very pretty for a convicted murderer.
Tommy Lee Jones, Ashley Judd.
Hello, Nick.
Where's my son?
Double Jeopardy, Saturday at 8 on Sky Premiere.
To find out if you could be better off with budget car insurance, call us now on 0800 247 247. Budget! 0800 247 247.
Designed to restore your va-va-voom. The new Renault Clio.
Would you like a mortgage that'll work for you, whatever happens? Then call Direct Line on 0800 051 5159.
If you find yourself in a bit of a squeeze, you can reduce your payments. Or even stop them altogether.
If you find yourself better off, great. You can increase them and pay off your mortgage sooner.
And of course, you get a great introductory rate.
Which is what you'd expect from an award-winning mortgage lender.
Sounds good.
Well, it gets better. Direct Line will refund your valuation costs.
And if you're simply switching lenders, they'll pay your legal fees too.
You don't even have to fill out a single form.
You can do it just by picking up the phone.
Whether you're moving house or just moving your mortgage, take the direct line to a flexible mortgage now. Free phone 0800 051 5159. That's 0800 051 5159.
I'm not your usual bank customer. I'm a marketing manager for a large firm of financial advisors, so I know a good deal when I see one. I'm not interested in short-term introductory offers. I have a current account, savings account, credit card, and a loan, all with Intelligent Finance. The really clever bit is Intelligent Finance keeps all my accounts separate, but their technology allows me to choose not to earn interest on my savings and current accounts, but to save interest on my borrowings instead. So in my mind, I'm better off. And I don't pay tax on my savings either. That's great. Well, it is, isn't it?
To find out how Intelligent Finance could make you better off, call 0845 600 4343 or visit if.com.
Hello. It's sometimes considered a curse by the music industry, but this year 11 artists are hoping for a Mercury Music Prize. Such is its reputation for killing a career that one band originally nominated asked not to be shortlisted. But established artists such as Radiohead and Basement Jaxx are still in the running, and the £20,000 that goes with the prize.
It's one of the most important dates on the Music Awards calendar. Tonight, 11 artists will battle it out for the Mercury Music Prize. The award, in its 10th year, aims to reward musical excellence and diversity.
Here you go, get the call.
Now, even before the event begins, one group has withdrawn their name from the competition. Damon Albarn's band Gorillaz, once seen as the favourites, were unhappy about being nominated. Not surprising, as this award is usually regarded by some in the industry as a career ender. But despite the prize's reputation, bands such as Basement Jaxx, Super Furry Animals and Radiohead are happy to let their names go forward. Homegrown talent Turin Brakes also make the shortlist for this year's prize. While their friends were into hip-hop, the boys spent their time listening to the Black Crowes and Prince.
We're probably at least giving it 5 minutes thought just in case we do win. But having said that, I really would be shocked if we won, you know. But we got nominated, so why not?
The prize is voted by music critics and journalists. As well as the title, the winner will walk away with a cheque for £20,000. Akhtar Khan, Sky News.
Now, some very, very sketchy details reaching us here at Sky Centre. Important enough to bring to you, though, at this early stage. We believe that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center.